Embrace the darkness of the Black Templars, Warhammer 40k's most zealous crusaders of faith and fury. Their relentless drive to purge heresy and their brutal devotion to the Emperor makes them the perfect faction for Grimdark painting. This tutorial explores the essence of the Black Templars. Weathered armour, scarred by endless battles and a brooding atmosphere that captures their fanatical crusade, translating their lore into a haunting, gritty aesthetic that screams war-torn devotion and unforgiving resolve. Hey guys, welcome back. As you may have gathered, today I'm going to be painting up a Black Templar, and this was a request from one of my Discord members. So I printed off this Black Templar Marshal model, and the plan is to really push the Grimdark style and try and produce a really gritty, battle-worn look. And I was in such a rush to get started with this project that I primed the model before applying the pre-damage. But that wasn't too much of an issue, as I can still just go in with a sharp hobby knife and make some scratches and chips across the armour panels. And once I was happy with all of the pre-battle damage, I then went in with some AK Muddy Ground textured paste. And I'm just going to apply this to certain areas that I want to be extra gritty, mainly towards the bottom sections of any of the armour panels, but also to any areas that I'm going to be applying some rust effects to later on. And this just gives a really gritty surface for the rust effect to apply to, and makes it much more realistic in the end. And after that was done, I reprimed the model in black. And normally the first part of the process would be to paint in all of the armour panels, but in this case, as I'm painting black armour, the primer will do. And I'll just go in with a light dry brush of some Citadel Skaven Blight Dinge, which will just apply some quick highlights to all of the edges of the black armour. And then I'll go in with another dry brush of Army Painter Gunmetal. And I'm just going to lightly dry brush this across all of the edges, which is going to create some chips and scratches. And then I'm going to also stipple this on randomly across some of the armour panels, which is just going to give a little bit of a chipping effect across the entire model. It was then time to work on the cloak and any cloth on the model. And to do that, I used the Army Painter Warm Greys and Whites triad, which is my go-to colour for any white or off-white areas. And for the darkest colour, I'll be using a fairly heavy stipple to make sure I get a nice even coverage over all the cloth areas. And then for the lighter colours, I'll just reduce the amount of paint that I'm using, and then apply a much lighter stipple and dry brush across all the cloth areas. And now that the armour and cloth had been base coated, it was time to base coat all of the rest of the other smaller details on the model. Firstly, starting with Army Painter Gunmetal, I'm going to paint in all of the silver trim, and that includes all of the chains, pipes and vents, and also on some areas of the gun and the blade of the sword as well. Then I used Mornfang Brown, highlighted with a little bit of Balor Brown, for all of the leathers on the belt and the handle of the sword as well. And for the skeleton on the backpack, I used two of the colours from the Light Neutrals Triad, and just used the same stippling dry brushing technique that I used for the cloth, to firstly build up the base coat with the darkest colour, and then just give a quick dry brush highlight with the lighter colour. And for all of the gold trim, I used the Army Painter Rough Iron and Greedy Gold. Firstly by base coating all of these areas in the Rough Iron, and then quickly coating them with the Greedy Gold. Next it was time to tackle the face, and I really wanted to make a Grimdark looking flesh tone. So I started by base coating with Pallid Witch Flesh, and gave this 2 thin coats to build up the opacity. I then applied an all-over wash of a 50-50 mix of Druchii Violet and Reichland Flesh Shade. And once that had dried, I then went in with a wash of Druchii Violet itself. And this time I tried to focus the wash more on the bottom part of the face, where it meets the armour panels. And once that layer's dry, I then go in with some Army Painter Quartz Skin, and build back up the highlights on the nose, cheekbones and the top of the head as well. I then went in with some Army Painter Dark Tone and applied this to all of the silver and gold metallics, and this should help take away some of the shine. And I also applied this to the skeleton on the backpack, and also used it to create a little bit of a crossfade on the blade of the weapon as well. Next it was time to add some additional detail to the model by applying some Templar style transfers which I'd picked up for this project. And I just used some micro sol and micro set to place these on some random areas across the model. Next I used plasma coil and data system glow to paint in the plasma coil on the gun and also the glow in the lantern. And for both of these I applied 2 or 3 coats until I was happy with the colour intensity. Next up it was time to apply an all-over wash of Villainy Inc.'s Goon's Grime, and I did this via an airbrush and just applied this to all parts of the model. And this just helps tie in the model with a unifying colour. And then after allowing 10-15 minutes to dry, I then come in with a slightly dampened with White Spirit's Q-tip or makeup sponge, and just use this to manipulate some of the wash and remove it from any of the highlight areas. Next it's time to apply all of the rust effects to all of the armour panels, and to do that I used Dirty Down Rust. And I'm just going to apply a couple of coats of this to any area I want to be rusty, and that's mostly going to be the bottom areas of any of the armour panels and any of the areas that I applied pre-damage or the textured basing paste as well. And then I just use a damp brush to feather out any of the harsh edges. And then for the cloak, I'm going to use the exact same Dirty Down Rust and just apply a few patches of this across the cloak in random areas. And I'm then going to use a damp brush to completely feather this out, not just with the edges like I did with the armour, but with the entire patch of the rust effect. And if done right, you should be left with a really nice and dirty looking yellowish patch on the cloak. And the key is here to keep feathering it out until you've feathered out all of these dark red kind of patches, and all that's left is a yellow stain. And finally I'm going to add some blood spray effects and some specks of dirt and debris to the cloak using an old toothbrush. Firstly, I'm going to be using Villainy Inc.'s Carrion Crimson, which is going to act as the blood effect. And I'm just going to dip the end of the toothbrush into the enamel. and then just use my thumb to flick it randomly across the cloak. I'm then going to come in with some green, blue and purple muted inks, and then just use the same toothbrush technique to splatter these various different colours onto the cloak. And this will just signify the various different types of blood and dirt that have gathered on the cloak over the years. And after that, that's the model complete and ready to be based. And I think this model was perfect for the heavy Grimdark look, and I'm really happy with the way the model turned out. And if you like this video and want to see more Grimdark painting videos for the other 40k factions, then just leave the video a like and drop a comment down below on which faction you want me to paint up next. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.